got your supplements and functional foods, legal developments, ingredient news, education, inspiration, entertainment, insider in the afternoon.
Hey everybody, welcome to Insider in the Afternoon. If it's Wednesday afternoon, it's Insider in the Afternoon. I'm your host, Todd Runstead, Senior Editor for NaturalProductsInsider.com. And we got a really nice show for you today. You know, it's the middle of June. It's the midsummer is upon us. You know what else is still upon us? Oh my God, COVID is still upon us. But you know what else is upon us? The vaccine. That's right. Oh, it feels good to have things open up. And now that we're sort of, a year plus past this, one thing that I've been thinking about is, we've all been hunkered down at home. And remember all the things that we used to tell ourselves back in before times, like, if I ever had the time, just to be here at home, I would clean out the garage. There's that project in the yard I would do. I'm going to reorganize the bookshelves. you know what? That was all BS. That was just stories we would tell ourselves. And when it really came down to it, when we were given the opportunity, you didn't do the yard project. You didn't clean the garage. What did you do? You hung out and you stared at your screen, just like right now. And, one of the interesting things that happened to me was, the New Hope offices, we shuttered down and we had a library there. And then I was like, man, I want to take some of these books home because I'm a book freak. And so now I have this like great collection of like the best of the best cream of the crop nutrition books. And here's one that I just came across, Tirona Lodog, great MD, just a brilliant woman down in New Mexico. She's written National Geographic books. So, I mean, we're talking first class. And I've seen her speak at some things, just about how she really tells us about how just vitamin deficient we are. And, so all the times when you hear, the mainstream medical establishment say things like, all you need is to eat a healthy diet. You don't need dietary supplements. No one ever asks the follow-up question, well, how many people do actually eat a healthy diet? And the answer is pretty much nobody. And so that brings us to dietary supplements and how us in the supplements industry can help people. And so one of the things that Dr. Lodog was talking about here right off the bat, I'm going to read you a couple paragraphs here. One is about vitamins and one's about minerals. What really struck me about it is the way that we can communicate to our consumer to really get them to understand the value and the health promoting properties of these things. And it's really about how we can make ourselves better. So here she starts off. You're an intelligent person. You should be able to turn that supplement bottle around, read the label, and understand what it's saying, right? Don't bet on it. The dietary supplement industry has not made it easy to figure out what you're buying. That's you. Consider vitamin B12. Is it available as a single supplement in doses ranging from 25 micrograms to 1,000 micrograms? That's a very big range. Taking 25 to 50 micrograms is sufficient for most people, but if you're deficient in B12, taking 50 to 1,000, 500 to 1,000 micrograms per day would make sense. B12 is also sold in combination with other B vitamins as part of the B complex supplement or as part of a multivitamin, multimineral. Taking the B vitamins together enhances their effectiveness, so either of these products would be a good choice, especially if you're taking a high dose of B12 by itself to correct a low level. B12 is also featured in products that contain various vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and herbs designed to help improve memory and energy. Look carefully at all the other ingredients. Are they really necessary? Would any of them interact with your medications? Also, B12 is commonly found in supplements in the form of cyanocobalamin and methylcobalamin. Is one form better than the other? Although many people are able to convert cyanocobalamin to methylcobalamin, the active form of B12 in the body, what if you're one of those people who can't, which you would only know through sophisticated lab testing? Taking methylcobalamin is the better option. As you can see, even with something as simple as B12, there's a lot to think about. And that's so important. Like when you're selling, when you're designing a vitamin bottle, it's like, what can you say? What should you say? What forms of the vitamin can you say? I think we really all need to, work on our communications, work on our formulations to give the best product that's out there. So that's my little reading message for the day. We're going to move on now with the Insider's Insider, Steve Myers. He's going to take you into an inside look at what's going on with Natural Products Insider with the digital edition that you can access on your screen right now. Take it away, Steve.
Thanks, Todd. In this installment of Inside Insider, we're going to talk about the buzziest 3 letters in our industry in recent years. Not GMPs. We'll leave that for regulatory editor Josh Long's upcoming show. No, we're talking about the love it or leave it, darling CBD. Cannabidiol, that is, green gold, Colorado tea. We recently published our CBD-focused digital magazine online. To find it, you just go here to naturalproductsinsider.com and select digital magazines in the drop-down menu. You'll reach a summary page right here. CBD seeks red hot status, our digital magazine, a little summary of what we have there. Our underwriters, thank you very much. Click the download button. You will have to register, but it's free for industry members. In this issue, which you will get in a PDF format, you can see here, we have a look at what's going on with CBD, which experienced a meteoric rise to it girl status a couple years back, but seemed to hit some major bumps in 2020. This is not a tale of COVID woe, but a segment craving the freedom to really explode with innovative products. Of course, one of the roadblocks is regulatory, the big roadblock, and we will tackle that in this magazine in various forms. But there's also a lot of different innovative angles to CBD. So we'll look at not just cannabidiol, but we'll look at other cannabinoids from the hemp cannabis plant, as well as endocannabinoids, the endocannabinoid system in the body with all those great receptors for CBD and other cannabinoids. And we'll also look at phytocannabinoids from other plants that are not called hemp or cannabis or Mary Jane or marijuana. So as you'll see here, we have our viewpoint from your host, Todd Runestad, and we have some expert writers and industry contributors who go deep on the future of CBD. What will it take for CBD to really make its mark going forward and with innovative products in different areas of health? So we have some articles here on ripe opportunity areas like bone health and others. And this is a great clickable PDF. You just hit through here. So we have some info on bone health, sports and active nutrition. There's been an explosion of products, CBD products from various professional athletes, former professional athletes in all types of sports for this market. And you'll see here that the World Anti-Doping Agency removed CBD from its list of prohibited substances. And there's an article later in this issue from Oliver Catlin of the Banned Substances Control Group, who goes really deep, as he usually does, on all things CBD and related in the world of banned substances. And we also have a look at minor cannabinoids. And we have a legal review here about everything that's going on, from class actions to what's going on with FDA, which is the big question. What's going on in the States? What do all those warning letters mean? And we also have some market input from the Natural Marketing Institute, who will look at consumer trends and what's going on there. What are people using? I think millennials are really using the most, are really the most active users. And we also have some info from Euromonitor, who weighs in on the market and forces and what's going on there. Now, normally this type of digital magazine is gated. You have to sign in, as I said, and we do post some online exclusive articles. We'll have some for MCT, for instance, and in the CBD world. But we're going to experiment in July, and we're going to ungate all these things. So you'll be able to access the full articles without having to download the PDF. So if you can't wait, download the PDF, but come back in July, because we'll not only have the articles from this digital magazine, but we'll have a whole bunch of exclusive content from podcasts and interviews, and who knows what we're going to come up with. But please come back and see us for our thematic CBD month at Natural Products Insider. And that's it. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Simple as do, re, mi. ABC, 1, 2, 3, baby, CBD girl. Back to you, Todd.
Steve, that's hilarious. Thank you for regaling us in that little thing. Thanks for also referring to CBD as Colorado tea. Oh, yeah. We always have some laying around here in Colorado. Nom, 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 nom. Whew, that's good stuff. Hey, let's move on to the next segment, shall we? Josh Long, why don't you tell us what is on the web today?
Hey, thanks, Todd. Last time you and I spoke on Insider in the afternoon, we talked about the ingredient NAC. There's been some developments since we last talked. When we chatted, there were reports that Amazon was taking NAC off the marketplace, which was a huge development that caught the attention of everybody in the supplement industry. I was subsequently confirmed that Amazon was in fact taking it off the market. That caused a huge buzz in the industry. Since then, the Council for Responsible Nutrition has filed a citizen petition with the Food and Drug Administration, which has asked them to reverse its position that NAC can't be marketed in a supplement. Most people know NAC is widely sold as a dietary supplement. It's been in the market for more than a quarter century. But last year, of course, FDA said, hey, you can't sell this ingredient in supplements because it was first studied as a drug. Now industry's, trying to fight back against the FDA. CRN filed its citizens petition about a week ago. The benefit of that is FDA does not respond to that. At some point, CRN could file a lawsuit in federal court. Of course, the people that are skeptical of citizen petitions will tell you FDA notoriously does not respond to those within the 180 day time frame. They'll say, hey, we need more time. We need to focus on other things. So consequently, industry's kind of stuck right now. FDA's taken this position. Industry doesn't like it. You can't go to court right now because they haven't made a final agency decision. So we're kind of in a wait and see pattern at this point. Speaking of FDA, NAC is part of what is now a $55 billion industry, according to our own Nutrition Business Journal. And FDA's Office of Dietary Supplement Programs, they have about 30 people to govern, to regulate, to police $55 billion industry. So it's not going to surprise anybody that the trade associations recently asked Congress for additional money for that office. They asked for another $5 million for ODSP. FDA advised me their current budget is about $10 million in fiscal year 2021, Todd, and it was the same in fiscal year 2020. So the industry trade organizations, 4 of them, want another $5 million for ODSP, which would bring its budget to about $15 million to, again, regulate a $55 billion industry. Of course, there's other entities within FDA that focus on supplements. For example, the Office of Criminal Investigations, if you're doing something criminal, the Office of Regulatory Affairs in terms of investigating in dietary supplement facilities for compliance with CGMPs. But it's a relatively small office. We'll see if Congress appropriates those additional funds. In the meantime, the FDA has limited resources, but I think we're going to hear that forever. So that's never really. The question really is, what does ODSP do with the resources it has? There's a lot of arguments that FDA, focuses on the wrong thing or they're reticent to enforce. I guess that's a conversation for another day, but you can throw all the money you want at government, whether it's going to spend the money prudently is another story. Finally, on the web, yesterday, the Senate, the New York State Senate passed a bill that would restrict the sale of weight loss supplements to minors. It's a pretty interesting development. It still would have to pass in the other chamber this week because the legislature is going to, they're going to end their current session at the end of the week. So if it doesn't pass this week, then it's pretty much dead. But it did pass yesterday, and basically that bill, S16D, if you can see here on the screen, would prohibit the sale of over-the-counter diet pills or supplements for weight loss or muscle building to minors, except when prescribed by a healthcare provider. I sponsored the bill, And she explained, some of the concerns. One is, the presence of, illegal pharmaceutical ingredients and weight loss supplements. Another concern is, the purported association between eating disorders and these products. Obviously, the industry trades are opposed to such legislation. We'll just have to follow this development. This week, again, today is June 9th, so there's a couple more days in the legislature in New York. And if they pass the bill in the other chamber, Governor Cuomo would have to sign it for it to go into law. One other final note, Todd: it would not take effect for a year until after it's passed into law. So the industry would have an entire year to lobby lawmakers, or actually it'd be the health department, and try to carve out exceptions to that law in terms of saying this ingredient or that ingredient should not be subject to the prohibition for these reasons. With that, I'll
Cool. Josh, that was awesome. Never a dull moment here in the supplements industry. And Josh, you are just the best writer we've got with all kinds of great stories on these issues and more. Yeah, you had a story on kratom that like completely blew up, 50,000 plus page views there. So thanks, Josh, for your insights into the world of supplements. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to turn this all over to the Toddcast. That's right, the Toddcast, the meat of this show right here. Today, we've got Eric Goldman. Now, he's the editor-in-chief of Holistic Primary Care. You can find him online at holisticprimarycare.net. As its name suggests, Eric and his publication and the events that they have, they're really for the practitioner that really wants to integrate natural healing, supplements, all kinds of sort of what might be called non-traditional left-wing healing modalities. Eric, how the heck are you?
I'm well, Todd. Thanks for having me on the show. Last time we hobnobbed together was at the ill-fated Non-Expo 2020, if you remember. We did something like that.
Expo Rest.
Expo Rest, that's right. So,
that's great. So Eric, there's lots to talk about, but I was checking out the holisticprimarycare.net website just the other day, and I saw there was this really interesting story that you wrote on psychedelics, the next revolution in healthcare. And, move over medical marijuana, right? Now we have completely unadulterated, completely natural product psilocybin mushrooms that are popping in Oregon and in Denver. They're leading the way again. We have research happening with ecstasy /Molly /MDMA on PTSD. So it seems like it's going to happen, but how is this all going to happen now that the Grateful Dead are no longer on tour?
Well, it's going to happen because we here at Holistic Primary Care say it's going to happen. No, seriously, This has been cooking for a long time. I mean, as I'm sure you know, and many readers, many viewers out there know that, back in the 50s and 60s, after Hoffman discovered LSD, it was taken seriously as therapeutic modalities. But then, by the mid 60s, the counterculture, so to speak, got hold of it, and it was basically vilified, and the federal government said, no, no more, you're not going to study this. We don't think there are any legitimate medical uses for these substances. And, we're talking about LSD, we're talking about ketamine, we're talking about psilocybin mushrooms, peyote cactus, all those kind of things. It was basically all put in the realm of the criminal activity, and so research basically ground to a standstill. Nobody could do serious work. Journals wouldn't publish that kind of work. But there's always been, in the subsequent decades, there have been physicians and researchers who saw potential value in using substances that induce these altered states of consciousness as actual healing modalities in a medical context. And so the research has been gradually growing, and a couple of years ago, there was like a big surge. Johns Hopkins University down in Baltimore, they opened up a psychedelic research center. Big. I mean, they got like a giant grant. I forget how much it was, but it was in the tens of millions of dollars to really look at this. And NYU here in New York is doing projects. A lot of institutions around the country. UCSF, I believe, is one of the leaders. Imperial College in London, they're doing work. I mean, this is a worldwide thing. And this is not, like hippies in a basement somewhere. These are like, serious medical researchers who are trying to understand how these substances can be used in a therapeutic context. I think it's fascinating, and we'll see where it goes. There's also Wall Street money's pouring into this. There are some companies now that are basically building business models around this, particularly around ketamine, because it is a legal drug and it can be prescribed by physicians. I know things for like psilocybin and some other substances are changing in various states, but for the most part, most states still consider those to be illegal and controlled substances. But ketamine is a prescribable drug.
And ketamine, I had seen like some of the police departments are using them when they're like apprehending certain, would-be criminals. They're administering ketamine, which I was like, really? When people are in a certain way. So I was like, wow, that's interesting how, and then I started the show talking about all the books that we had at New Hope. Michael Pollan, he came out with this book a couple of years ago, How to Change Your Mind. And so this is all about, psychedelics and a little bit on meditation as well. So yeah, it certainly seems to be going. There was this new a phase 2 MAP study or a MAPS sponsored study. Can you talk a little bit about what that was and MAPS? What does that stand for again?
That stands for the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Research. It's a group that's been pretty active over the last 20 years. Started by a guy named Rick Doblin, who's I believe a clinical psychologist. He's a PhD of some sort. And they're kind of like the nucleus, you could say, of this modern psychedelics movement. A lot of real smart people connected with them. And they're funding a whole bunch of different trials. They were, again, particularly focused on ketamine. Now ketamine, there are a lot of people in the psychedelics field who don't really consider it a true psychedelic because it doesn't generally induce hallucinations. Right. They refer to it as an empathogenic, or entheogenic. It alters consciousness, but it's not going to necessarily make you see visuals. And
which was really important during the drum space of Grateful Dead shows. Just saying.
Yeah, that was really important, and I'm sure there were people on ketamine there too. But it's because it's still in the legal medical context. There's more latitude for working with it in healthcare. So Doblin and company have been focused on that. And so this trial that was just published, I want to say about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, was ketamine-assisted psychotherapy versus psychotherapy alone in people with PTSD. And it was a pretty large study and wide spectrum of people. You had like veterans, back from combat. You had survivors of childhood trauma and abuse and, a broad spectrum of patients. And what they found was that compared to psychotherapy alone, the addition of the ketamine experience radically improved the outcomes. Much less symptom burden. Many of the people that had the ketamine-assisted therapy no longer qualified as, quote, PTSD patients using the criteria, the diagnostic criteria. So it's a landmark study. They've got another study, I think, that's going to be published later this year. And what's real interesting, we were talking earlier, Steve was talking, was it Steve or Josh was talking about FDA. FDA considers ketamine-assisted therapy as a breakthrough therapy, which is a big deal. That basically means that it's better than anything else we've got, so it warrants a serious look. And it's the first time FDA has actually sort of stood behind anything that has to do with psychedelics or, substances that alter consciousness. So it's a step along the way, for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. So basically, like nothing in the pharmaceutical cabinet has been working for this. And then you hear, okay, well, some of this research is going on with psychedelics. It's like, well, nothing else is working. Okay, go ahead. And then surprise, it works. I think it's interesting that it works in the context of therapy. Like just, tripping balls out in the woods, maybe that'll make you better, but really what you want is a guided person to really work on the issue that you have, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And MAPS is pretty straightforward in stating that, as are a lot of the other people in the field. Like this isn't recreational. This isn't about having a good time or blowing your mind or, discovering nuances in the Allman Brothers at film.
Catalog. but still, Dwayne Allman, when he got together with Jerry at the Fillmore East in February of 1970, come on, that split open some people's minds.
Yeah, but it did. But that's the point is they're trying to get away from all the kind of stereotypes about the psychedelic experience. The point with these things, and a lot of the people in the field will talk about this, the common factor that all these substances have is that they interrupt what's known in psychiatry as the default mode network, DMN. Right. And the DMN is basically it's a sequence of brain circuitries that creates your ordinary, normal, usual sense of self. It's where all your habits lie. It's where your sense of identity, your anxieties, all the things that you worry about, all the repetitive thoughts and loops that we all have in our heads. That's the default mode network. And what these substances do, whether it's ketamine or psilocybin or they suspend the function of the default mode network. So the consciousness is freer to connect in other ways, and it creates new neural pathways. And so the people that are working with this in the therapeutic context are saying that this is important because as we know, much of illness, the big burden of illness that we're facing in this country, whether we're talking about diabetes or cardiovascular disease or depression or autoimmune diseases, almost all of them have a huge behavioral component, i.e. habits. They're connected with what we choose to eat, what we choose to drink, whether we do or don't exercise, how we feel about ourselves, how we relate to the other people in our lives, how we feel about our work. All that stuff is connected, and that's the whole holistic paradigm. Like, these are not separate realms. These are all connected things. And when people are stuck in loops where they're feeling shitty, they're eating shitty, they're not, they're not functioning well, it's very hard for them to get healthy. And so I think the idea with the psychedelics is not, so to speak, to blow people's minds or to have, colorful experiences, but really to get them out of the rut of habits that keep them trapped in a disease-promoting state. So it has very big implications. I mean, PTSD and depression and anxiety are getting a lot of the headlines right now, but the implications for this are much broader for healthcare, which is why in our article we say that it's basically the next revolution in healthcare. And I do believe
when I was reading the Pollen book last night, and he's talking about the default mode network, and he says it's not so much our thoughts and our feelings as with how we relate to our thoughts and feelings. It's where we get caught up in the push and pull of our experience. This has particular relevance for the addict. It's one thing to have cravings, but quite another to get caught up in your cravings. And so that's where I think you can make that break of like, okay, you can have this addiction or this addictive quality to your condition, but you don't have to get pulled away by it. You can sit, like Pollen relates it to the meditative state, where you can just sit and be patient with these uncomfortable feelings without getting pulled away by them. And then that's the way toward healing. And I think it's really just fascinating that with psychedelics, you can sort of approximate this meditative state and really come up with some profound healing that goes on with a lot of these really big conditions that people are stuck with, depression, addictions, end of life issues, things like that. It's wow, these are really powerful issues, and psychedelics of all things within the context of therapy. Wow, this is a real breakthrough with a lot of these really sort of postmodern problems. Like PTSD is kind of like it's ironic, isn't it, that it's sort of like a military issue, like all the Middle Eastern wars that we've had, and soldiers are coming back with PTSD, and it's like, well, wait a minute, psychedelics are associated with the sort of peacenik hippie loving set, and it's like military industrial complex meet hippie, and maybe we could solve some of these issues.
Yeah, well, and that's what's interesting about some of these companies like Mind Bloom and Compass, where they're developing business models. And we're talking about, serious investments. I mean, Mind Bloom is trying to develop clinics, like a chain, basically like replicable clinics all over the country that offer assisted therapy. We're going to see where that goes, but they've got quite a juggernaut behind them, and as does Compass. They're also developing, I believe it's ketamine or MDMA-assisted therapies. Now, like everything else, we're going to see synthetics coming into the field. We're going to see people who just see this as a next big way to make a buck, and so, keeping it on the even keel and with the right morals and values is going to be a challenge, just like anything else. But certainly it's happening, and it's important to pay attention to.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I mean, I don't really think this is going to be anything that you're going to be able to find in your supplements market, or even, I mean, maybe a dispensary, with mushrooms as being, because it's such a natural product, maybe we can get there. Anyway, a real fascinating conversation with Eric Goldman, holisticprimarycare.net. You can find him online. Great talking to you, Eric. And we will see you at the next expo. We will not be resting on our laurels. We will be getting out there, discovering new things. Really appreciate it. That's all we have for today in Insider in the Afternoon. Thanks for joining us. If it's Wednesday afternoon, it's time for Insider in the Afternoon. Thanks for joining us, people. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Sustain